Hello YouTubers and welcome to today's episode. Today we've got some higher intensity training. But let's get to it. This is outside the house. It is dark, getting darker in the mornings. Hopefully this isn't horrendously dark. And it's a Friday with the Friday shirt on. Oh, yeah, not quite the same as usual. I've got a different one. I've splattered some paint on this one. Not really. Okay, now let's get to the club, get changed, get ready to go for the first session, which should be on the water. All right.
We collide, we break down, caving in to our doubts, faces filled with sadness. When words are said, we'll regret. I can see the fire that we made just to save us. When we try to make up for never letting go, said the things we promised not to say, then we break up just to start all over, even though we know this is the hard way to better. We can't be heartache together. This is the hard way to...
An interesting session this morning with Callum. Working on some speed. Now let's get breakfast.
Yeah, genetically modified
And we're in the crew room after a pretty good session for breakfast to fuel up. Because remember, food is fuel. Then we've got some more intensity later on. Oh yeah, so that'll be good. And now it's time to chill out, relax, all that jazz before the next session. Ed? Feeling good. And now the fueling up has finished. And it's time to go, go, go on the water.
We can't be heartache together. This is the hard way to better. We can't be heartache together. This is the hard way to better. We can't be heartache together. This is the hard way to better.
More video analysis today during lunch, and it's time to fuel up after a wonderful session. Oh yeah! And we've made it inside the house. We're at the editing station, and as you can tell from the title, I'm going to talk a little bit about training intensities after that pretty decent row with Callum doing higher intensity work. So rowing is So it's 2K you have a race for usually, and especially in the summer, apart from like head races and stuff throughout the winter. The time for 2K, for a 2K race, is around 6 minutes, give or take some time, depending on the boat class. And on top of that, it is so like an explosive movement, and it's also, it takes a lot of fitness, it takes a lot of endurance. So for 6 minutes, if you're trying to do an explosive movement, it's like on the edge of endurance. There's muscular endurance, explosive endurance, and all that. But it is also not really that long for just complete endurance. So it's kind of like a middle ground of in fitnesses. So a combination of aerobic and anaerobic. And that's where sort of the big arguments of rowing training, or really any activity or sport in general, where they're training benefits come in. So you can basically, very, very simply, and obviously this is all based on my opinion, it's not really on any sort of fact or science, the training can really be based very simply on, or like two things: training intensity and training volume, and you can change both. But you can't really go high intensity, high volume, and it doesn't really make sense to go low volume, low intensity. So then you usually see high intensity, low volume, or on the other side of the scale, low intensity, high volume. And so then you see a lot of different ways people race, say at the World Championships or whatever activity or sport you do. You see people who they compete in very different ways, if they're different techniques, different approaches and all that. And for rowing especially, you can see different people race in different ways. So some people go out at a speed off the start, hold that speed for each 500 and then get to the finish and don't really change the speed. And you've got other people on the other side of the scale who might go out really, really fast and then slow down a bit, and then maybe the last part of the race go really, really fast again. And so I think that the people that sort of flatline, they maybe, as I could be completely wrong here, stick to the sort of higher volume side of things, less intensity, and then you go into the other side where you go to high intensity, low volume, where it's usually the people that can generate a lot of power really quickly, fade off, and then generate again. But that could be completely wrong. These things can be, like for me, I come from basketball background, so I did a lot of training of like jumping and sprinting, and so I'm reasonably explosive. So it's now a case of toning that down for rowing and trying to get in the fitness or the aerobic base in rather than anaerobic side. So I can really churn out some high watts for a short period of time, but then doing closer to like 80% for a longer period of time is more difficult for me than, say, other people who are more aerobic rather than anaerobic. And so for rowing itself, like I said, it kind of falls in the middle, and there isn't really a best way of training, especially for any sport. There's no best way. It's all about sort of training the way that is best for you, or best for your team, best for your boat, best for your whatever. And that could be high intensity, low volume, or it could be low intensity, high volume. And it's just, or it could be a mixture of both, where it kind of like goes up and down, it changes every week or every whatever week, depending on the program. But it is a big sort of argument between sort of between a lot of people that say, okay, you have to train this way, you have to train so loads and loads of miles, and then you'll be really good. Or other people say, no, you have to train really high intensity. Really, it depends on the individual or the team, because say the individual is very aerobic and is able to churn out those miles easy, and it's really easy, and I've talked about variation before. If it becomes really easy and you're doing the same thing over and over again, it's probably going to end up being quite boring, and switching it up can change that, vary it up and make it less boring and possibly increase the rate of progression. But also, it's just variation doesn't mean, okay, yep, I'm guaranteed to improve. But usually it's when you're able to improve your weaknesses is where you could make the biggest gains. Not all the time, but that could really help. So if your weakness is the aerobic side, the fitness side kind of thing, the endurance side, well, maybe that endurance side, improving that will improve your overall speed over a distance, rather than, okay, I can generate loads of watts, I'm going to ignore that I can't do the fitness side, kind of long distance stuff, so I'm just going to get more and more watts, but then I still can't really do the other side of things. So It can really depend on the individual, where your weaknesses are, and then so you kind of have to take a hard look at yourself and think, okay, what am I good at? What am I bad at? And then, okay, right, my fitness is weak, so I'm going to improve that, but then maintain the other side of things. Or, okay, my strength and explosiveness is weak, so I'm going to try and keep the volume, but then, or like change the volume and then try and push on the intensity to try and increase that explosiveness, increase that intensity. But like I said, you can't really have high intensity, high volume, or low intensity, low volume. It kind of has to be a bit of both. And that bit of both, what side of the scale, can really be sort of polarizing for some people. But let me know in the comments below what side of the scale you sit on. Do you prefer, or are you more sort of endurance-y? Or are you less endurance-y and more sort of that explosive and power side of things? But that will be it for the end of today's episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it, especially the footage in that pair. Just a bit different, and I actually got to work quite hard as well. And remember, subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that like button. And as always, Yam Squad, have a good one.